I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, we're live here at the NRA Convention and Meetings, and I've got the Vortex Nation podcast crew here. Jimmy, Ryan, thanks for coming on with me today. Appreciate it.
Certainly. Thanks for having us.
Enjoying the show so far?
Yes, very much so.
Excellent. Yeah, and Texas could probably support their own show. If you could only let in Texas residents, you'd probably fill the building.
There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of Texans out there who love guns.
Yep. God bless them. Well, I wanted to bring something up that you guys did a few years ago. It was a really cool project, and I want to see, kind of why you picked what you did, and moving forward, how would you do it different today? Because there's been a bunch of advancements up until that point, and that was the $1,000 to 1,000 yards. And I just thought that was cool because anybody can do it, and you use components that were available, and Ryan was making it look easy.
Yes.
Yet, it was great.
Yeah.
So what'd you guys do to set that up?
I don't remember how the idea came about. Jim kind of took over.
Well, do you remember? So, this was around the time when we had very first come out with a Diamondback Tactical. And so, I mean, at time of recording now, we have a great number of rifle scopes that are in the capable of doing long range for not a tremendous amount of money category.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, the Diamondback Tactical second focal plane, mind you, a 3-9 and a 4-12, were like, oh my gosh. I mean, our minds were blown by the fact that for about $300 or $350, you could get this optic that had it had essentially what was our VMR reticle.
Yep.
You could get it it came with an exposed elevation and windage turret.
Yep.
And it had pretty decent optical quality.
Yeah.
And so we were like, you could actually dial this thing to some pretty extended ranges. And it just kind of started putting the numbers together in my head, I remember. And I'm like, okay, so 1,000 yards, that's obviously the big milestone everybody thinks about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all right, well, this scope is like $300. And then I'm like, that Ruger American over there in 6.5 Creedmoor, I mean, heck, that's like at the time it was a $400 gun or a $350 gun, whatever it was. And I'm like, geez, the rings aren't that expensive. We throw in some factory Hornady loads, we'd be shooting 1,000 yards. And I'm like, for less than $1,000.
And that was it.
Bing, bang, boom.
Bing, bang, boom.
Done.
And so we just kind of put it all together. It was our pro rings, I think we even used. We didn't have to go down to the, kind of entry-level rings. We actually used a decent set of rings. Everything was really excellent quality, entry-level, reasonably speaking.
Yep.
And, it was staggering, I would say. Because, we went out there with Ryan. I mean, it's not that I didn't think that we could do it, but then as it started to unfold before my very eyes, I was like, wow, you don't need to spend a buttload of money to shoot pretty darn well.
And it wasn't like you guys were just hitting a target. You were hitting it with consistency and repeatability.
If I recall, it was 11 consecutive impacts, and it was a standard IPSC target. So I think they're 27 by 18, or thereabouts. And I think we had a second round impact. I was low on the first shot. I had 3 over the chronograph and at least got a baseline. Turned in the adjustment. I saw my first round impact was, I think, 2.5 MOA low, and then just gave it the rest, and then
ran them. That's awesome. And what cartridge was that in?
6.5 Creedmoor. So that was 140 ELDM box ammo, white box. Those were the first rounds through that gun.
Really?
Yeah.
No break in, bolted together.
No, that was flat out. Yeah, just everything was from the factory. And I remember we had 2 gals out with us who were on the marketing team at Vortex at the time, and they were pretty new shooters. I don't think that they'd tried even remotely shooting at 1,000 yards before. Now, granted, you had it all dialed in, but they just kind of got behind the scope, and they also hit it 1,000 yards too. It was within, I think one of them even had a first round impact for them. You know, very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And when you look at that, was just a couple of years ago, or maybe I say a couple.
It was a handful because we were still at our old building.
Okay, so now we're going back. Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
So we moved into the new HQ in 2018. So it was before that.
So when you look at ammo, or at least when we look at ammunition production, when I kind of started in the industry in 2013, and certainly prior to that, factory ammo was like, you could get by, and it was good ammo, and there's a bunch of people making good ammo, but the real serious long range shooters, everything was a hand load.
Yep.
And when we launched our ELDX and our ELD Match line of bullets and subsequent lines of ammo, I feel like that was a turning point, not just for Hornady, but for the industry, where the quality of the factory ammunition just went to that next level.
Yeah.
And, you used to reload to get better performance, and now a lot of folks are reloading to duplicate factory performance.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, Jimmy and I have done exactly that just to do it, right?
Yeah.
Reloading to the extreme. We shot the Vortex Extreme with reloaded ammo. Mark and myself. Mark, who's completely inept at anything mechanical whatsoever. We reloaded and we pretty much just went to match factory.
Yeah, exactly correct. So we just duplicated the load. But to your point, I think that the ammunition is one thing. The cartridge is another very significant advancement. When we've had this conversation over at our booth at the show here, people ask the question, what should I get? And in almost every scenario and conversation, if it's hunting or long range precision shooting, etc., we come back to the 6.5 Creedmoor, and then they're like, "Well, how's the ammo?" I was like, "You just go buy a Hornady factory ammo and you're done." You turn the key in the thing and you drive it away.
Yeah, that really lends itself to our design philosophy. So when every cartridge we've designed since 2006 or 5 or so, starting with the 30 TC and onward, chronologically, we really have the accuracy from the chamber design standpoint figured out.
Yeah.
And so when we design a cartridge chamber, we design the cartridge and the chamber at the same time, and the dimensions that we specify lend themselves to that quote-unquote taboo term of inherent accuracy.
Sure.
If you cut a chamber to the standard dimensions that we've supplied to Sammy, you are going to end up with a reamer that is going to cut a chamber that is as close to match grade as you need, and lends itself to being accurate in the $350 Ruger American or the $3,500 custom rifle. You're going to get really forgiving accuracy across the course, and that's the 30 TC, which is not a popular cartridge anymore, but that gave birth to the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6 Creedmoor, the 6mm ARC, both the PRC cases, and that turnkey accuracy. You can't ask more than that. That's just fantastic. Now let's talk about the optics though, because the scope, you said there's some advancements there that at the time were pretty groundbreaking. An exposed turret, a good optical quality, obviously enough to see out to 1,000 yards, a good reticle, at an incredibly affordable price.
Well, yeah. The hilarious thing about that is that, like Ryan said, was 5, maybe even going on 6 years ago or something like that. And already we're to the point where for the same amount of money that you were buying that second focal plane for a 1-inch tube, very simple 3-9 or 4-12, the same price now, you're actually able to go out and get a Venom. Same price or very close. The Venom 5-25 by 56, 34mm tube, first focal plane rifle scope with parallax adjustment. It's got the EBR-7C reticle in it, or 7D.
Mechanical zero stop.
Oh my gosh.
It's unbelievable. And just in that short amount of time, we could do the video over again and we would have people were looking at Ryan shooting a 3-9 by 40 and kind of like, hey, that's really cool. He's like a really good shooter. I'd like to have more magnification, or, maybe not in a full-on competition would I use something like that. But now the Venom is like, why wouldn't you use this in a competition? I guess, maybe if you can afford a Razor or a PST or something like that, go for it. But why wouldn't you? This has now everything. There's next to no compromise, aside from a few of the really high speed features or that optical quality you might get. There's otherwise next to no compromise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if we could redo this over today, go to the gun shop and bolt one together, what would you guys change? Would you change anything? Obviously, maybe upgrade to that Venom scope. Sticking with the Ruger American, sticking with the 6.5 Creedmoor. There's obviously some more options out there now.
I'd love to say all of yes to the above, but it would seem too easy.
Ryan has thoughts on this. I'd love you to elaborate on if we did version 2.
Okay, so I have two thoughts, and one is kind of tongue in cheek. So bear with me. A lot of people didn't like that I had a bipod on that gun.
And a suppressor.
I forgot about the can. But a lot of people didn't like that because they felt that was an unfair advantage. And that's true. In general, it was like a very, very piecemeal situation. I think I had in the back of my Ford Escape a Caldwell shooting bag. I was like, I should use this for a rear support. And it just looks terrible. The form is horrible. And so part of me wants to get a single shot, break action, exposed hammer, whatever, in Creedmoor or in 308, just some good cartridge with good ammo, same ammo, and just duplicate it, but to actually take 2 sticks cut from the woods and some duct tape and then like fashion some sort of shooting rest. But that's kind of also a slight. And I
550 cord, maybe get that involved somehow.
Yeah.
But then again, like as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about this, it's like, well, cartridges exist now, like 300 PRC, and 300 PRC is a pretty special cartridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rifles exist chambered in PRC that are not disproportionately more expensive than the one that we were running. Optics like the Venom do exist with a much taller travel range, and I'm thinking about, okay, well, what is my max effective on that?
I know where we're going with this.
Yeah. And technology exists now that using programs like FortOff, we could really learn a lot about a lot in a little bit of time, and we could probably push that envelope.
I think we could do 1 mile for 1,000 yards.
Wait a minute. 1 mile for 1,000 yards?
Dollars?
Or, excuse me, 1 mile for $1,000.
What is the conversion of yards to dollars?
Sorry,
It's like Stanley Nichols to
shoot bucks.
Yeah.
I'll give you 1,000 Stanley Nichols. Do 1 mile for $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely possible. I'm doing the numbers in my head. If you can see the math floating around.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beautiful mine. I recall us at the time coming in at we were just shy of $1,000 at like 970.
Okay, so we'd have to stretch that out a little
something
bit.
like
'cause
that. Yeah, because we might want to
PRC
get like
ammo's
the
a little
20
more
MOA
expensive.
rail and something like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could put a pen and paper to this. I really need to look at it. But I'm confident we could be really close.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Or
Well,
even.
plus,
Go ahead, sorry.
Anyway, no, go for
I
it.
was going to say, even we could maybe do it in 2 phases. Take that original Ruger American in 6.5 Creedmoor, which you've already absorbed the cost of $350 or $400. Upgrade it with maybe a different base, set of rings, new scope, and I'm sure we've all shot the Creedmoor to a mile. It's not the best cartridge in the world for it, but you can certainly do it with some consistency.
Yep.
That would be cool. And then maybe stretch the budget a little bit to do something in 300 PRC.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just start dropping bombs out there at a mile, because you'd mentioned earlier, Jim, that the 1,000 yards is kind of the benchmark, and it's almost laughable at this point in time, with FortOff, with ammo, with great optics, with good chambered guns. It's not that much of a challenge anymore, and now it's not just hitting something, it's how small of a group can I shoot. So push that boundary out to the magic mile.
Yeah. It was not long ago that it wasn't long before I came to Vortex. It was probably about a year before I came to Vortex where I broke 1,000 yards. And I remember thinking, like, what an experience that was. And I'm not saying it's easy now, but the equipment certainly takes a lot out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's super doable.
I mean, heck, at this point though, like we're starting to talk about distances. Like you're saying, 1,000 yards. There's feels like less of a challenge to do it. It feels a little bit less of that mystique around it.
Right.
But you still got to find ways, because not everybody's going to be able to shoot at a mile.
Yeah.
You got to find the right range to shoot at in order to do that. But and then like you said, maybe you can shoot a tighter group or something along those lines at 1,000 yards. And there's always ways to make it more difficult. But the fact of the matter remains, I think that there is so much in the industry now that's making it so approachable and so easy for your regular guy or gal to buy stuff that they need to do something that like previously just would have been almost unheard of. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that the industry has, there's simple things, like even when you look at ARs, and I don't want to go too far off topic, but remember when it used to be like you'd be trying to buy an AR and you're like, okay, I got to make sure I get the mil spec buffer tube and not the commercial spec buffer tube. And it's like, okay, I got to make sure that like I get the lower receiver that has the right size trigger pin holes or something. You know what I mean? Like there's so much weirdness around and nothing actually worked together quite right. And now people have we've smoothed out those ridges and stuff's starting to work together really well. Your ammo, a gun from, in that case, again, Ruger, who's, we're plugging there, but, the scope from Vortex, the rings from Vortex, the base from EGW, whatever it is, everything is just working together so nicely now.
Yeah, that 100%. And we probably can't advance the conversation at all without talking about rangefinders, because I've talked about this on our podcast and on other venues before. When I was first cutting my teeth into shooting stuff far away, the Bushnell rangefinder, and nothing against that rangefinder, it's just the way it worked, ranged to 250 yards.
Yeah.
So to shoot 500, you stake the target in the ground, you drive your truck into the hayfield, you range the target, you put a flag in the ground, drive your truck, and then walk back and range your truck. And that was how you got to 500. Now, the push of a button, you've got 2,000 yard, 3,000, 4,000 yard ranging capabilities. Before you can get your finger off the trigger, you got a returned range.
Yeah, and with a higher degree of accuracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really been in pretty short order just within the last half a decade or so, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Very much.
My first big time rangefinder, I paid $874 plus change after tax. And the capability of that rangefinder has been superseded by just about everybody now, and you're at a fraction of the price.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and absolutely. I mean, what we could do at one point in time, that success was completely and totally predicated on the rangefinder, and that product, rangefinders in general, and then the products that are in symbiosis with it have changed the dynamic of the field completely. The
Mhm.
things that we can do now,
Yeah.
because we can actually find out how far we are to the target without having to make a few stops along the way.
You're right. I was
Yeah.
just at your booth looking at the new Crossfire, the newly released Crossfire rangefinder, ranging capability past 1,000 yards.
Yep.
And again, you get the range back
Yeah.
before you can
Yep.
release the trigger. It's
Well,
amazing.
what was it, Ryan, when we came out with the Ranger 1000, Vortex's first rangefinder?
Yep.
That was like 2012.
Yep.
So yeah, in 2012, our flagship rangefinder, and we were all like, "It can do what?" It was a 1,000-yard rangefinder,
Yep.
and now we're like, "Oh yeah, this is our entry-level rangefinder. It's a $200 rangefinder, 1,000-yard capability. It's got first mode. It's got it's got like all these modes on it:
Scan
angle
and whatever.
compensation, illuminated display.
Yep.
Like it's got all this stuff on it. It's like, yeah, so that's where our entry level is. Then we go to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, the Fury 5,000 with ballistics on board, and you're like, man, that was not much time.
Yeah,
No,
somebody
10
push
years.
fast forward real fast.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, guys, thanks for sitting down and chatting with me. That was a cool project. I'm glad you guys did it. We
Yeah.
need to look into maybe the 1 mile for $1,000 or yards. And,
Whatever the conversion is.
Yeah.
I think we can Google that conversion.
Yeah,
So,
Preston, put that on the Googleizer. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
again, thanks for sitting down with me. We need to get you guys on the show on the long form and talk about optics, because it's something that I know very little about. I bolted on and moved the turret, and that's my level of understanding. So
If we're doing our job, that should be all you ever have to know.
right on.
that's true. You don't need to know more. That's
Awesome.
perfect.
Thanks. Well,
Thanks,
guys, appreciate you listening in, and we'll catch you on the next one.